The whole point of a service business is to hire really good people and then resell their labor. What I think a lot of people get wrong in the services business is they try and charge a little bit, like 2 or 3K a month, and then they try and hire an army of VAs to like outsource the work. You can't hire like some junior person with no experience to do a full CRM implementation for you. Like it's just not going to happen. Sorry. And then you're selling to bad clients because the only people who want to pay you that little are not very big companies. Versus, I just closed a deal for $50,000 upfront payment, super profitable. The bigger the customer and the more they pay you, the easier it is.
All right, Jacob, super excited to have you here and talk with you today.
Looking forward. It's been a
Yeah,
while.
yeah, it's been 7 or 8 months, I guess, since you talked to Clay Bootcamp. Huge amounts of knowledge. I remember personally, I learned a ton, and since then, a huge amount of changes have happened for you and just the macro environment in general. So really excited to dig in.
Likewise, yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting.
You're in Israel now, and you were in New York when we last talked.
Yeah, so I was based in New York when we last spoke. I actually was calling you from Maryland visiting family, but I was based in New York and now I'm in Jerusalem from what we work in my office here.
Nice, nice, very cool. Let's dive in. You grew up in West Virginia, and now, yeah, you're in Jerusalem studying the Talmud.
I grew up across, I was in Maryland, technically in Maryland, but I was across the river. I could see West Virginia basically from my porch. It was like across the Potomac River, more or less. And yeah, now I'm in Jerusalem. Kind of a big change, that's for sure.
For sure, yeah. And you're pretty young. You're
I just turned
24,
25.
25. Okay.
Yeah, that's something else that changed since we last spoke. I was
Yeah.
24.
What's your story in between West Virginia and now?
Um, I don't know how much of this time you want to take up with this, but I'll give you the short to medium version. Yeah, I grew up in this like small country bumpkin town, went to public school. I grew up going to the river and going floating and going hiking and biking and just messing around with friends in the countryside. I had family like closer to the DC, so I wasn't fully like a country boy my whole life. As a non-observant Jew, I was the only Jewish person in my town. I didn't really care much for Judaism overall, and I just lived like a normal life. When I was 16 or 17, I was working at a restaurant called the Market Table Bistro, which is like a farm to table bistro, as a dishwasher. I had a few businesses beforehand, like eBay businesses and whatnot, but I felt that it would be appropriate to have some real work experience, to learn how to work on a team. And a friend of mine was working there, so I got a job. Very hard work. I got paid basically like nothing, like $7 an hour before taxes to work like 30 hours a week while in school, washing dishes. I cut my hand, cut myself, but I learned hard work. I learned about discipline, and organization, and um, actually learned how to cook, and also learned that working at a job was not for me. So I was determined to get out of there. My older cousin at the time had a successful website about Bitcoin, and he was able to travel and leave school, and so I thought that was kind of the path for me. So I started a website about gaming computers because I was into gaming. I learned about affiliate marketing and SEO. I got into, yeah, after high school and after work, I would go home and I would work on the website and have it try and show up in Google for best gaming PC under $500 and then link to Amazon parts and get commissions. Funny story, I actually convinced, I used to do work study in high school in my senior year. I had enough credits. So I was able to, instead of going to a class, I could leave school halfway early and go to my job. And my boss would give me a grade around like how I was doing, and that was my grade. So I convinced the teacher for work study to let me do my own website, my business. Because I was like, look, it just crossed my income for my job if I work on this full time. So I got to leave high school senior year at like 11 in the morning and just go home every day and like do whatever I wanted. And I'll just say I wasn't always working. So by the time I got to college, I wasn't so interested in the 4 year degree and, you know, but my parents were like, you have no backup plan, so go to school. So for the first year I was there and I hustled to get clients. I was like, my website's not making enough money to support myself fully, but I have this SEO skill. I can sell to other businesses. So I started cold calling, cold emailing. This is where I got into cold outreach. Also, even the website itself, I had to use cold outreach to get clients and sorry, to get backlinks, etc. I did door knocking. I got into sales and I started getting like SEO clients. And after my first year, I called my dad and was like, Dad, I just canceled my tuition for next year and my dorm, and I'm dropping out of school. He was like, what? And I was like, bye, boom. And then I spent 7 months in Europe traveling, and SEO as a broad service was hard to sell. It's very generic, which we'll get into later about positioning. But I realized that when I sold a specific component of SEO, which was backlink outreach, which I was very good at, I started getting clients like wildfire. And I went from being totally broke, 19 in Poland. I think I made 20K in sales in a month and I was over the moon. But I eventually shut that business down because I realized that uh, backlink building was just kind of scammy, and like you're just trying to game a Google algorithm, and I wasn't willing to charge enough money per client to scale. I was charging like 2K a month per client. I was doing all the work myself. I couldn't hire people. It wasn't good. So this is all gonna lead up to how I got into clay. It's almost there. I'm about 3/4 of the way. I realized I kind of humbled myself and realized as a 20-year-old at this point, I think I was 20, that I didn't really know everything and I probably should get a real job and like learn a skill. And I figured the best skill I could learn was sales. Because if I could sell something, I could just do whatever and I'll never be out of money. So I got a job as a full cycle salesperson for an agency, and I brought in 1 million in sales in the first 6 months, self-sourced with cold email. So I was reaching out to people to book meetings. I ran the deal cycle myself, and I closed it. I was actually selling outreach. The common thread through all these businesses was cold outreach. I'm just trying to build up the case that I have experience with cold outreach, and then I'm going to slam dunk on outreach as to why I'm not doing it anymore. But fine. That led me for a year later to go to Service Bell, which is now Rep.ai, where I was the first go-to-market hire, and I sort of built up the outbound motion. Like there was no playbook, so I was in charge of calling people, emailing people, and just sort of figuring out a repeatable message to to get meetings for this new product. And after I did that for about a year, we hired more SDRs, and I moved into product management. I was doing like product management half the day, and that's where I got into HubSpot and APIs and webhooks and learned a bit more of the technical side. And the other half of the day, I was managing the SDR team and dealing with the problems that I dealt with on a personal level doing outreach until then, as well as managing a team. And that was about 2 years, and then I found Clay, and that was probably in like the summer of 2023, so about a year and a half ago. And Clay solved the biggest problem that I had until then in outreach for myself and my team, which was you either had a ton of manual work on your plate. I used to spend all day when I was doing outreach. If I wanted to have a good campaign, I would personally spend a full day just researching and adding companies or people to my Google Sheet, finding their emails. This is before ChatGPT could write first lines. I actually had a system where I had VAs from the Philippines build lists for me with a very specific technique, and then I would hand that off to an American VA who could write a custom first line for me for $1 each into a Google Sheet. But I was getting 5 meetings per 100 emails I sent, so I was getting a meeting for $25 each. So it was working pretty well. I would close deals with it, so it was saving the time. It was a lot of manual work, and it still wasn't accurate or slow. Or you could buy a list from ZoomInfo or Apollo or one of these tools, but they were so inaccurate and so poorly categorized. I just never really trusted them. When I found Clay, I was able to finally enrich a list that we had of 80,000 websites that we knew were using HubSpot, but it was just websites. We didn't have anything else. We needed to know, are they B2B SaaS? Do they have a lot of website traffic? Who do they sell to? How many setups do they have? Where are they located? I used Clay. I nerded out over Clay when I found it for like a whole night, and I built a sick enrichment table. And the video's on my LinkedIn actually about a year ago if you want to check it out. And Clay took notice of my adeptness. I don't know how quickly I was able to pick up the platform, and they introduced me to the co-founder. And then they saw Service Bell. We became mutual customers. I met the team in Brooklyn back 2 offices ago. So I met the team I think right when they were starting to blow up, and I was posting what I was doing. I started getting tons of inbound leads for Sculpted, and and I realized like there's a consulting opportunity here because Clay is quite powerful, and I knew it was going to blow up, but I also knew it was very complex, and so I thought of it kind of like HubSpot or Salesforce, which both have huge consulting ecosystems around the platform, and so I started Sculpted. I don't think I have time to explain how I got to Jerusalem in detail, but the very short story is at the same time as all this was happening, I started thinking more about my personal life and like my values and what kind of family do I want to have and who do I want to marry and what kind of community do I want to live in and like what path am I going down now. And one thing that I realized was I thought that in order to have a healthy marriage, I would need to uh, have the same core values as my wife. And I hadn't really, and one of those core values was religion, and I had never really considered religion before. I wasn't anti, I just actually, at one point, I probably was kind of anti, but I never really gave it any thought. It was just like, I was just anti for no reason. And I decided that I should give it a fair investigation before I made a decision. That was like almost 4 years ago. And then I just slowly, like, you know, uh, became more and more interested and then took on more and more and more. And a big part of that is studying text. So now I'm in a yeshiva in Israel. I'm here in the yeshiva until around most days until 1 or 2 p.m. And then I come to my office and we work around 3 to like 10 p.m. But that's American time, so I get to study half a day and then work the other half of the day. And it's a nice blend of like my old and new, I guess new life. So that's kind of how Sculpted was started, and that's where we're holding now.
Very nice. that you were sharing. Where do you see yourself in, you know, several years from now? Like, or what are you mentioned what you're optimizing for in terms of family. You want to marry someone with similar values. Is there anything else that is that the main thing? Or is there anything else you're optimizing for?
There's like business and personal outcomes. I think I view the business as a means to an end, the personal outcomes. Yeah, I want to get married soon and have a family, um, which is a big deal on its own. And I realized I used to think, okay, I'll do that, check, and then I'm going to do this crazy organization that helps the whole world and save the world. And I realized that like it's not so easy to have like having a good family unit itself is a large order. I think saving the world starts at home and really with yourself. And so yeah, I've been doing a lot of self improvement the last few years, trying to. And then there's the family, and then I think that will launch pad into the next thing. And I view the business as a way to accomplish that because it's flexible, it's good income, and it's remote, so I can live here, for example. Um, and I also think that a lot of charity organizations are charity organizations, and they rely on donations to fund themselves, which I think is, excuse me, kind of silly. I'd rather have a business that makes a lot of money myself, and then just bankroll my project myself, so I don't have to ask anybody for money. So I'm hoping that Sculpted can fund that sort of project with the profits. So yeah, I don't need Sculpted to be like a massive billion-dollar company or public or anything. I mean, it's a service business, so I wouldn't get there anyway. But I think 7 or 8 figures a year is nice. Have like a solid team, a small but lean and solid team that you enjoy working with. Um, you know, that's sort of the goal, I'd say.
So did you, when you started Sculpted, was that while you were working at like how did that work? Was it as a side project at first?
Yeah, so I think when I started Sculpted, I was still working at Service Bell. Now it's Reptile AI, but I was still working at Service Bell, and I wasn't trying to start it. This is actually kind of the opposite. I think was why I did so well. It's the opposite of my prior businesses. I think my prior businesses I was trying to start specifically because I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and then I was just looking for a way to be an entrepreneur, which is okay. Like it's good to have that entrepreneurial spirit. But really, a good entrepreneur is solving problems, and they're usually solving a problem that they personally have and they've solved successfully. Because otherwise, like in the past, between shutting down my link building business and getting my job, I was spending that year trying to figure out some other business to do because I couldn't drop the identity of being an entrepreneur, and I just kept spinning my wheels. And like I realized it's okay to like have a job, and really that I would make more money in this period where I'm trying to figure things out. I would probably learn a lot more than I'm doing now, and I would actually find the real business problem to solve. And I realized I'm just not going to start another business until I have a real problem to solve that I feel personally qualified to solve. Corporate entity was still around, and I was still getting income from it, but it wasn't like a full time thing. I guess 3.5 years after that decision to get a job, when I found Clay when Sculpted started, and it was an accident, meaning to say, like I found Clay to solve my own personal problem. My last, I guess, 6 or 7 years of working experience really um, positioned me well to take to it quickly because of my mix of go to market experience, technical background, and also I just became very familiar with Clay very early on. Also, the leads started coming. I didn't start like going to door knocking this time trying to find customers. I started getting tons of inbound leads just from posting what I was doing on LinkedIn, which I also did it on a regular basis. Like I always felt it was valuable to have an audience. So I was always posting on YouTube and eventually LinkedIn on a regular basis just like kind of build my personal brand. And then that eventually paid off with a lot of inbound leads for Clay Consulting. What happened was I think towards the end of the summer of 23, I had a few customers like Landon Meyer, Ronan Paysar, a few other like people that you may have heard of. They paid me like it was like a small deal like here and there for a setup. But I got 3 customers to pay me for these setups. And I don't know where I heard this before, but I think maybe it's Alex Berman. I don't remember where I heard this, but I heard an idea that I liked, which is that if you can get 3 people to pay you for something, it means you have a business. Meaning to say, like, people could say, oh, it's a really cool idea, but like, if they don't pay you, they're just saying that to be nice. And if one person pays you, then maybe it's a fluke. But if you can get 3 people to pay you for the same thing, it's probably because like there's a market here and you have a problem that people have and the solution is resonating, the value prop is resonating, and it's so much that people are willing to pay you. So once I had 3 customers, I was like, okay, there's something here. Now I need to wait for the right customer so I can quit my job. The right customer meaning that they're willing to pay me a lot of money so I can prove that Clay is something that people are willing to pay a lot for. Because one of the lessons I learned last time was I was getting these 2K, 3K one-off customers, and that for a service business, the whole point of a service business is to hire really good people and then resell their labor. In order to have a really good business, you have to have really good people who want to earn a lot of money. And that means you have to charge a lot of money for their services. So what I think a lot of people get wrong in the services business is they try and charge a little bit, like 2 or 3K a month, and then they try and hire an army of VAs to like outsource the work. But the VAs suck because I mean, they can do certain things. But I'm saying you can't hire like some junior person with no experience to do a full CRM implementation for you. Like it's just not going to happen. Sorry. And then you're selling to bad clients because the only people who want to pay you that little are not very big companies. Versus, I just closed a deal for $50,000 for 3 months upfront payment. Huge company, and they're so easy. It's super chill. It's super profitable. The bigger the customer and the more they pay you, the easier it is. And I wanted to have customers that were willing to pay that much so I could hire the right people. My co-founder, he was my employee, he's with the co-founder. He is awesome, and he can run the customer lifecycle end to end. Like one of our new CM enrichment customers, he ran it end to end. The guy was stoked. He's renewing on a 6-month contract. And at one point, I don't even know what he was doing. He started writing code because we pushed Clay to its limits, and he's a developer. So he started writing code that I don't even know to write. And I was like, oh, dude, I don't even know what you did, but this is sick. Like, great job. And I can fully trust that he's going to take care of it, which it allows me to just focus on sales and business development. So when I was at ServiceBell/Rep.ai and I was waiting for this key customer, the criteria were, will they pay me a lot of money? And also, who are they? Because also, a second thing I realized is the referral network. Like, I get leads from LinkedIn. I'll probably get some leads from this podcast. I'll probably get some leads from my YouTube channel. But the real source of growth for an agency is referrals and word of mouth for most agencies. And so people hang out with people like them. So if I landed like a random guy who has a founder who has no money, all of his friends are also founders with no money who won't pay me anything. So I was waiting for an actual solid person that would have a sick network and money, etc. And that's when I was referred to the CEO of Sendoso by Clay and his first sales hire back in the day, who they were now starting a new startup together, and they wanted to hire someone for Clay for that startup. And that startup itself, fine, it was a small seed startup, but I knew that if I crushed it for them, that they had a sick network, and so I took them on. They paid me. I won't say they paid me a solid 5-figure amount for the project. I said, look, I want to crush this for you. This is a big project. I can't crush this for you if I'm doing a full-time job and trying to do this in my spare time. I need to give this proper time. In order to do that, I have to reduce my hours at work. And in order to reduce my hours at work, I need you to pay me enough to justify the decision from a financial perspective. So I can both so I have the cash as a safety net, but also to prove to me it's worth it that the market wants to pay for this. They were like, totally get it, no problem, boom, easy. It was great. And that's when I went from full-time ServiceBell to part-time ServiceBell and part-time Sculpted. And then I kept working on Sculpted until I was making so much at Sculpted that I was able to just quit my job entirely. And that happened because I went from the startup into Sendoso, which was my best case study ever. And I worked with them for a long time and did really cool stuff with them. And then the CEO of Sendoso, Chris, introduced me to tons of other customers after that. And then that's how my agency really started to grow. And then it just became a snowball from there. So, yeah.
Were you just saying no to people when they?
Yeah, I said no to like 20 people. I was asking for 20K minimum up front before I said yes to somebody. And I kept saying no. I probably said no to 10 or 12 people before I said yes to them. And this is another thing, which I think is why it's important to do this with a job, not just to be like a broke entrepreneur. When you need to be in a position of strength to negotiate with people. Like if you're not willing to walk away from a deal, you're going to get screwed. You're going to undersell yourself. The best agencies are booked out for months and they have to like have people beg them to take them on versus begging for the customer. And I in the past had no money, I had no job, and I was trying to support myself fully from my business. So I needed any customer I could get. So anyone that was willing to give me money, I would say yes to them, even if it was not a good client. And bad clients are the death of an agency. One of the reasons I liked having my job, starting this business, was I had the cash cushion as well as the income to just say no to people if I don't want to work with them until I had someone that was willing to pay me a lot. And then I was still willing to say no to people because I had pipeline and I had money coming in from the business, so much so that I did not need to be desperate and just take anyone on. So I could be selective with my customers. And I closed some I had 5 to 10 customers in my outreach days of Sculpted that are like name brand SaaS companies that anyone in SaaS has heard of. And it's because I was able to say no and just like not, to take on bad customers because I was desperate for cash.
That's been historically been a huge challenge for me, and I think most people struggle with that. For you, it's something that you had to learn, or were you just born with that ability to?
To say no or to have
Yeah, yeah.
No, both of them I was not born with. First of all, I'm very agreeable. Like I have a hard time saying no to people actually. I've had to work on being more disagreeable. I think I've definitely improved, but it's definitely not my nature. And in terms of saying taking on bad customers, my first few years of business, I did that all the time. It was only through failing by doing that that I learned. This time around, it wasn't a good idea. Yeah. I think, just to touch on this, I think it's actually something that we did differently. Another aspect that I thought about was I could either go the course route and like help people become clean experts, or I could go the like done for you route. And I chose done for you because I thought it would be like going back to the referral loops and like case study thing. The CEO from Doso knows the CEO of like all of his buddies are like the leaders of like, the biggest SaaS companies in Silicon Valley because that's like what he is. He's like a tycoon in that sense. So I knew if I did well with him, I would have a great network, great referrals, and they would pay a lot of money. And then down the road, once I tap out all that, then I can say I work with all of these brands. And I made all this money already. Now I'm rolling out a product for the middle market or the bottom of the market as well. And then I'm more credible. I've also maxed at the top of the market anyway. Versus if you start from the bottom of the market, meaning to say like the do-it-yourself DIY like course market, their friends are not necessarily like that well connected. I'm sure you have probably some people who are like in cool positions at companies that are trying to learn themselves how to do it for their job. But by and large, I would imagine most of the customers are like people that want to get into clay and be and entrepreneurship, and they're paying because they don't have the background that they need. So their referral network is not as strong. I think there's still a business to be made on their end. Like I know a guy who was making like 40K a month profit with just himself doing courses for this thing. I don't know what you're doing, but I know that there's definitely good business there. It was just a different like path that I took, I suppose. But not necessarily right or wrong.
It reminds me of Alex Hormozy talking about you want to start out
That's why I did that. Yeah, the Tesla.
doing super
Right,
high.
right.
Yeah,
That's why I made that
this
choice.
book.
I'm a big fan of his. I think most business gurus are like scammers. I haven't actually investigated his businesses to like tell if they're legit or not. I assume that they are, but I think just from the advice that he shares, I can tell that he's like really smart, and so I like to follow his advice.
I feel like $100 million offers is probably the most impactful business book. I don't know. It's up there
I think
at
it's up
least.
there. I also just read $100 million Leads, which I also really liked, but I would say the best business books are retroactive psychology books, like How to Win Friends and Influence People.
That'll make you a people pleaser, though.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's true. But that's what you need to be and have people like you.
yeah.
And well, it's strategic. Also, Influence by Robert Cialdini. Another one was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Awesome
Oh, that's
sales
a
book.
great book. That's made me so much money.
Yeah. After reading $100 Million Offers, I wish I'd read. Like, if I could tell anyone who wants to start a business to read one book and give you everything you need to start a business, it would be that book because he just like cuts through all of the BS and just gives you like really, really good formulas to understand what people buy and how to articulate value, which is really the main thing you need to know, I think, to grow a successful business because most people, uh, they just can't sell anything and they don't know how to like spot a problem in the market. And like for me, I think my strongest skill set is spotting market trends and like pivoting based on what I'm seeing and like articulating the problem well and speaking out the value well and being creative. I think that's as an entrepreneur what you need a necessity because you have to always reinvent yourself with the market. Like, if you just continue doing the same thing over and over again, even though the market shifted, you're going to be left in the dust. So
That's a nice opening to talk about. You've pivoted recently, made a huge splash on LinkedIn, at least in my world. And then, yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit about what you were doing before, what you're doing now, and then why.
I think it might be actually, I'm about to launch a new site that I might want to share the homepage here, the
Okay,
hero at least
you
at
can
some
do
point.
that
But
for sure. Yeah,
um, so when I started Sculpted, really, I think when you start a business, you should just start with what make. This is also our music tip. Like, start with like the most high value thing that's also the hardest. Usually, because it's also the easiest to sell. Meaning to say, like, just pay me money and you will get tons of meetings with people that want to pay you money. You'll be like, great. He basically says it's a continuum. The easier it is to sell, the harder it is to deliver, and the harder it is to sell, the easier it is to deliver. Done for you outreach is very easy to sell. It's very hard to deliver because it's just selling leads. However, in delivery, you have to do all this stuff: list building and copywriting and targeting and messaging, email deliverability and sequencing, sending, monitoring the results, iterating all the time, doing it for 100 different offers. How many full-time sales development teams struggle to generate pipeline despite having managers and directors and tons of reps and tooling and all this full-time energy on one target market and one offer? Now as an agency, imagine doing that for 30 different clients at one time. It's just like impossible. It's so difficult, but it's very easy to sell. And so that's what people started asking me for. So I just went with the market. And despite it being difficult, I felt like I was one of the best people to do that because of my experience. And so I was comfortable doing it. I did it over and over again. I started encountering some challenges with that offer. I saw like a two-pronged issue that I wanted to that made me want to pivot. And I can talk about what I pivoted into. Essentially, I'm actually dropping done for you outbound as a service entirely. I do not do any more outreach for any of my customers. I have actually one legacy customer who I still do outreach for, but at the end of their contract, it's going to move to full CRM enrichment. And I'm only doing data hygiene and CRM enrichment for clients. Specifically, I'm trying to focus on HubSpot and using Clay to clean up CRM databases because I don't think anyone's ever said I like my CRM data, and I think Clay can solve that. And I think it's a much better problem for me to solve. Over the last year of talking to go-to-market leaders in the SaaS space for Clay use cases, the primary use case I was hearing was outbound automation, but I was selling to small and medium companies. When I would once in a while speak to a very large company, I actually heard a different problem set, which was around CRM enrichment. But because most of my customers and my service were focused on outreach, I kind of ignored them. But when I started encountering problems with outreach, both as an agency and as a business, but also seeing in the market what was happening, I felt like it was time to pivot. I think there's sort of two sides to the coin, like I said. The first being as an agency owner and like thinking about the business, and the second being just even if I was a sales development leader and I was trying to generate pipeline for my company, like how would I attack the problem? So depending on who you are, if you're listening, if you're an agency owner, then I think both will be relevant to you. And if you or want to be agency owner, and if you're not an entrepreneur and you're working at a company and you are just trying to generate pipeline, I still think what I'm going to say will be relevant to you, but maybe only half of it. So maybe skip to that part. But the point is, I'll start off with the main problem that was a catalyst for my pivot. That was email deliverability. I actually just I'm working on an article for Clay right now about this pivot, and I want to show an image of a sequence that I was running as an example of why I pivoted. Let me just pull it up real quick. This is a client that I had that was getting several leads per day. You can see on the 13th, if I zoom in a little bit, they had one lead, two leads, and this is just during the testing phase. Normally, I would run small campaigns of like 100 emails a day or a few emails a day, and like measure the conversion rates, and then I would increase from there. And you can see here that I have one lead per day, two leads per day, one lead, five leads. The week before, I was like a few leads a day. I was getting at least a few leads a day, and these were good leads. They were turning into pipeline, like opportunities. And then all of a sudden, I didn't turn off open tracking. You can see the purple is open. All of it, just everything died, like nothing. And I was like, wait, what's happening? Like this is crazy. Like I don't understand. The conversion rates were very good. I was getting really good replies. Even people who were saying no thought the email was awesome, and it just died. And I knew it was deliverability, and we tried tons of different things to solve this problem. We tried of course, buying new domains and new inboxes and more personalized outbound and warming up for longer. And we even did things like buying from GoDaddy and Namecheap all of our domains and using like an incognito IP so that they wouldn't know it was us buying. And we used Bitcoin instead of credit cards. Maybe if they traced it back to my credit card across all these domains, they knew I was. We tried ridiculous things, everything. My co-founder said to me, "It's kind of like you're driving in a car and you hear a noise and you like hit the steering wheel and then it stops and you're like, oh, okay, I must have fixed the problem. And then it starts again. You're like, oh, and you hit the dashboard and then it goes away. And like, you don't really know what you're doing actually solve the problem or not. And you also don't know what the problem is really. And also you have people in the backseat like, hey, are you okay up there? And you're like, yeah, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Like, we're going to get there. It's all good. Meanwhile, your car's breaking down the highway and you don't even know what's going on. That's like what solving deliverability is. And even just if you look at like, 200, the recommended, like when I started outbound in 2017-ish, roughly the recommended total emails per day was like 200 per inbox, right? Now I've heard as low as 5 per day, and it's just approaching zero. I also never worried about deliverability ever the last almost 10 years. I had 80-90% open rates, 10-20% reply rates, 5% meeting book rates for my campaigns. Never really burned domains. I had no issues. I never was worried about deliverability updates and, oh, everything's going to die. I thought everyone was always freaking out. This year, it for sure changed. And I was not willing to have my whole company based on a service or offer that was fully dependent on Google's algorithms. And like, if they wanted me to reach the inbox or not. And even if I did reach the inbox, now there's so much volume, right? Like COVID doubled outbound volume, and then it probably leveled off again. And then AI made it even easier to send, and now it's just so through the roof, like with volume, that spam is at the wazoo. And I was just seeing customers that were doing really well all of a sudden just plateau out of nowhere, and I couldn't do anything about it. And so I just couldn't. It was causing churn at a very high rate, and I just could not, as in good conscience, like. First of all, I didn't want to sell something I no longer believed in or that I didn't think would work. And even if I did want to sell it, people would eventually just stop buying it because everyone would hear that I'm a horrible agency, and then it would be over. So like even if I wanted to do it, I wouldn't be able to. Um, and that was sort of like the main catalyst. And I think that, at the same time as an agency owner, if you think about like how to scale something, like it's so hard to scale outreach services because, like I said, there's so many moving pieces. So I just felt for both reasons it wasn't good. So I wanted to go back to the drawing board and think to myself, like, how can I solve the same problem, but in a different way? And so what's the problem? The problem is that everyone is trying to generate more pipeline with less resources because of budget cuts or whatever, and they have less SDRs or outreach isn't working, so quote unquote, even though it does. And at the same time, you have the tailwind of AI on the rise and automation and like the promise of a better tomorrow in terms of efficiency. And the old way of solving that problem was just sending tons of emails. And people say, oh, it's still targeted. It is a being kind of spray and pray still. So how can you solve that same problem set and make people more efficient without spray and pray and deliverability? So I was thinking, I don't believe that Google and Microsoft cared that much about a single salesperson sending a valuable email to another prospect if it's a one-off email. I just think that they don't appreciate people trying to game the system with these sequences and automations. So in order to send those targeted emails, reps still have to use their brain and research and do a lot of poking around to find the right people, like I used to do back in the day, which causes it's a lot of work. So I thought, what if I just automate that component for people? Yeah, and like take that manual step off their plate so the reps can still do their job and still prospect one-to-one, but still be more efficient and not have to worry about building their list. And I started thinking more about that idea, and I realized that I spoke to a lot of customers and a lot of prospects that had very large CRM databases. And I've had customers tell me they have 250,000 accounts in their CRM, but they don't know which ones are actually the right ones for their reps because they have a very specific ICP. And in order to service those accounts, like ZoomInfo and Apollo, they can't really enrich the data properly. You have to have a layer of manual research. So they have to either hire a VA agency and wait a long time, pay a lot of money for inaccurate results, or waste their sales team's time enriching the database. So Clay is perfect for that. And I thought that was actually the exact thing I did with Clay in the first place that got me started with Sculpted, is I built a really solid account list for my sales team that worked very well. And this also is not dependent on Google algorithms. I'm not beholden to how many leads I generate for you. I'm only beholden to, you told me what you want in your database, and I enrich it for you. And I realized that once again, I have an edge over people. I have a full stack developer on my team. I can do really cool workflows. And so the more I started thinking about it, the more that I wanted to do this. And I started pitching this to customers in sales calls instead of doing outreach. And I started closing customers, and I landed a few key customers once again, like I did a year ago, got some really good wins with them in case studies. And now they're renewing. All my customers I've closed since pivoting, by the way, have renewed. I've had zero churn. I've had only renewals, which is a very good sign. Referrals, case studies, and I'm now redoing my site. This is like a sneak preview of my homepage. This is not live yet, but we want to redo our whole offer, our whole positioning, and focus on connecting Clay to HubSpot and saying goodbye to bad CRM data. This is me and my co-founder right here. And we're just speaking of the problems that I think I just articulated on the call. Clay is definitely the best solution for this. And, I think Clay is going to go in this direction too. If you stay tuned the next few months, I think CRM enrichment is probably one of the top priorities as well. I would be surprised if they continued to also focus on the outbound use case. And I think that I'm probably the only service specifically focusing now on CRM enrichment. I think everyone else is in the outbound automation bro world. I do think over time people will follow suit, but I'm hoping that I have a bit of runway before people start trying to copy me as well.
When you announced on LinkedIn that you're going in this direction, I'm having a lot of conversations just because of the nature of Clay Bootcamp. I have a lot of conversations with people who are thinking about starting an agency or in the agency world. And I saw people are definitely perked up. We got a couple people who are also big leaders in the space, at least two, mentioned, oh yeah, we've not been talking about this, but we do this as well. And I don't think either one has pivoted around it like you have. And then I see a bunch of new entrants starting to think, oh, maybe I should do CRM enrichment as well. Like that's interesting. I hadn't even considered that business model because what I see, like new people, they see everyone else talking about outbound on LinkedIn and they don't realize there are other opportunities as well.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of funny because by me sharing all of this, like, I'm just giving away all of my, like, I guess, quote unquote, tricks up my sleeve to competitors or potential competition. But I don't think it's the end of the world for a few reasons. A, like, I think me being the thought leader and sharing this, just like, if in 5 years from now, when everyone's doing this, I can be like, hey, everyone, look at this podcast. Like, remember me before I thought, I think also it just is kind of a marketing tactic. I'm creating like, some buzz and like people are starting to say, oh wow, like this guy's cool, So, and also I think the CRM enrichment market's a much bigger market and a much more durable market than outbound automation because when I started Sculpted a year ago, I actually had if you ask my co-founder, I'll tell you, I said, we have 1 year of this before it dies and then we have to figure something else out. I did not think CRM enrichment would be the next thing, but I just figured outbound would die in a year because people were going to catch on to it. It was going to be so overdone. And like, I just didn't think it was going to work anymore because like marketing only works for a short period of time, a tactic before it moves on, like Facebook ads, TikTok ads, because it's all about capturing someone's attention. And to capture someone's attention, you have to stand out from the crowd. And so when you're new to something, it works. But then once everyone does it, it becomes like status quo and then people don't react to it anymore. So now there's more clay emails in your inbox than non-clay emails. And now it doesn't work anymore. So, you know, um, I think on the other hand, CRM enrichment is not that because it's not really a marketing tactic. It's just like a fundamental business process and a business problem. The CRM is supposed to be the motherboard of your go-to-market operation, but it's all bad data. And so every company basically has a CRM. In order to actually care about your CRM data, you're pretty much going to be a medium to large company already. So I'm like going into a bigger market with more companies, larger companies. Um, I think it's more durable because deliverability algorithms won't just shut this down. Like it's not dependent on that or marketing trends either. It's just like a fundamental thing. And this is for sure the best solution. And I'm pioneering. Like I spoke to the Click product team last week about the gaps in their product for CRM enrichment. So I feel like I'm on the forefront of like you're gonna start seeing more content coming in the Q1 about this topic and what we're doing and cool stuff. And the last thing I would say is I don't think other people are as qualified to do this as I am, and that's actually one of the things that one of my best customers said recently is like a lot of other clay agencies are superficial. They just want to get a customer in and out and get in their client. And uh, you can take a course, even if you take a clay bootcamp course, which is a very good course, and I think it's good. But it doesn't. You can't do that and make up for my 10 years of experience in go to market, outbound sales. I built the integration with HubSpot for my last tech startup as a product manager. I also was the HubSpot admin and a SDR manager essentially and a rep myself. And so I just feel like you can't fake that. So big companies can tell when they speak to me that I know what I'm talking about and they want to hire someone who they can trust, who's an expert versus someone who's new. So even if people copy me, they're just not going to be selling to the same types of customers that I will. So I'm happy in that sense for all these reasons to share with the market and with my competitors because I think it will help everyone. It will help other people make a better decision with their agency and not make the same mistakes that I made. I think it will show my customers and my future customers that I'm a thought leader and I'm innovative. And I think it will help the other customers, like more people, be serviced properly. Meaning, I think less people should be hiring outbound automation agencies, and more people should be focusing on the fundamentals of their business, which is like solid data for their go-to-market operations. So there you go.
What advice would you give to new people who are thinking about getting into the GTM engineering type space? They're tech savvy, um, understand, a little bit of copywriting and selling a little bit, but they don't have a business around it yet.
I think this is controversial advice, although I think Eric actually from Growth Engine X may have shared something similar somewhere. I don't know. I can't quote it exactly, but and this is going based on what I've already shared during this interview, but this, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, about my own mistakes. I actually think they should get a job as a GTM engineer somewhere, not start a business. I think the Clay Bootcamp is a really good funnel to get employed. It's like some SDR training course. They essentially gave free SDR training to a bunch of people, and then they took those people and made them candidates for placements, and then the business made money by placing candidates as SDRs, like a recruiting company essentially. I think Clay Bootcamp is better fit in that capacity to help people break into this go to market like career path, and and get a job somewhere. And I think the reason I'm saying get a job is because, you know, if you're new, there's so many skills you don't have as an entrepreneur that you need, like knowing how companies work and knowing how buying processes work and like having actual experiences to talk about in your past experience and your past work experience. Like when I get on a sales call, I can anytime someone talks to me, within about 30 minutes, I can diagnose their problem. I can understand where they're coming from, and I can also usually share a relevant story of something that I've done personally in that situation, and that just makes them feel much more comfortable. It also makes me feel more comfortable that I can actually take it on and I can charge a premium. It just so many things like you need that experience and you can try and get it as an entrepreneur, but you're just going to sell to bad customers who, because the good customers who would give you good experiences want to hire people that have experiences that are good, which they get through their job. So if you have no experience and you just try and break into it, you're not going to get good customers most likely. You're going to be spinning your wheels. You're going to be trying to get customers, but you can't really. Versus if you get a job, you'll get paid while you're learning and working with really cool companies and really cool people. And then eventually, as you build your experience, you'll stumble into a problem that you personally want to solve, like I did, and you'll hopefully have come up with a cool solution for it. And the business will start itself. You won't have to do anything. Versus when you try and start the business, I think along with this is actually in the Talmud, just to make it come full circle. The Talmud talks about the short long road and the long short road. This is one of the stories in the Talmud. I'll summarize it. Someone saying, you know, I want to get to this castle in the faraway land. How should I get there? And the guy says, you can take the long short road or the short long road. So he goes, I'll take the short long road. So he's like, okay, this is the short long road. Go this way. So he quickly takes the short road, the short long road, and arrives at the castle very quickly. But when he gets there, it's actually a long road because there's a moat and there's alligators and dragons and he can't get in. And he comes back. He's like, what? I thought you were telling me to go to. This is the short road. He's like, yeah, it's the short long road. You get there, you try and shortcut, but you end up taking forever. Take the long short road. So it's the windy long path. But once you arrive at the castle, you can just walk right in the front door. It's the long short road. It ends up being much easier. And I think I tried taking the short long road earlier when I was younger, and I did gain from that trip for sure. You still learn things along the way, but ultimately, I think the long short road is a better path for most people. And I think getting a job and then starting your business is the long short road. Sorry, especially if you're a young person in your 20s or even in your 30s, like you still have lots of time. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Jacob. I know you have to run. So yeah, we're 1 minute late. So thank you so much.
For sure.
Super.
We'll catch up on LinkedIn afterwards. I did have to run. Sorry, but it was good. It was good chatting.
Same. Bye.
Take it easy.